Okay, we'll bring the Finance Committee meeting to order. It is August 11th, 6:08 p.m. We have the whole board here in attendance, a couple of faculty here, or administrators here as well, and a couple of people in the audience, including members of the PA Economy League. Well, let's just get started. We asked the members of the PA Economy League to attend our meeting tonight to think that they might be able to provide us with some assistance with a couple of issues that we are facing that came up last spring, one of which was enrollment. We had a model that was developed by our previous business manager, Kim Seldamridge, that we use for forecasting enrollment going forward. It's been pretty accurate. We've actually seen our enrollment actually drop faster than what the projections had been. Our current business office has been working on using that model and revamping it, and we just, with some of the pushback we got from the public, we thought maybe bringing in a third party that has some more experience in this matter would be appropriate for the school board to consider. So I invited Susan Baker and I'm sorry, it's Charlie Waters to come tonight to meet with the board or the Finance Committee and discuss what it is that they do exactly, how long they've been doing it, how you do it, and so that we can take that information and bring that to the full board for consideration. So without further ado, why don't you guys come on up to the podium, or if you want to sit up here, that's fine too. We can make room for you guys up here if it's a little bit more comfortable.
Probably would be okay, because then I can speak to
okay.
Everybody can do.
We tend to be a little bit more informal with our committee meetings, so it's a lot of give and take.
Okay, well, have a little bit, 5 or 7 minutes.
Please.
To provide an overview, and then we can go in any direction that you.
That's great. Did these microphones work, by the way?
No,
they're not on? All right, I just thought that might help with the recording. Okay.
Steve and I are a team. I do most of the talking, but if we were to get involved here, we would be co-project managers on analysis of your demographics and enrollments. As you can see, we're not going to offer a multimedia presentation, just a nice laid-back overview of what the Economy League is, the kind of work that we do, the experience and track record with regard to public school enrollment studies, the scope of a typical study, and of course respond to your questions, and most of which I think what we will say tonight will be reinforced with some materials that we leave behind. So we'll start with what is the Pennsylvania Economy League. We're a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan group that has been conducting research in government finance and management since 1936. It runs the gamut from statewide and regional policy issues down to local government, budgeting, fiscal planning, operations, and so forth. We have staff located in Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Harrisburg, and Wilkes-Barre. Our sole purpose is to provide facts and objective analyses so that sound public policy decisions can result. And we enjoy a 75-plus year reputation for objectivity, independence, and expertise, and for being free from partisan considerations and other matters that are often perceived as clouding government decision-making. Susan and I have been directly involved in more than 200 studies of public school enrollments over past 25 years or so. And we obviously have gained a wealth of knowledge and experience during that time, and we've also generated a pretty sound record for accuracy. So when you combine our independence and expertise with our experience, the product is an untainted and reliable base for planning and decision making. Our client list, which almost in its entirety is included in that folder, includes numerous districts in Berks County. I did a head count the other day, and I think we've worked for all but 3 of the districts in the county, including Daniel Boone back in the late 80s and the early 90s when Dr. Jones was the superintendent. But we've been involved with other districts in the neighboring areas. Recently worked for Eastern Lancaster County, which isn't too far off, Boyertown area, Norristown area, Radnor Township, and many others. With respect to the specific study, we engage in a fairly labor-intensive process in the course of reviewing and analyzing your demographics and projecting your enrollments. We look at population trends and estimates and projections. We look at birth patterns by municipality, variety of other demographic factors. We spend a considerable amount of energy looking at housing and related activities throughout the district, including permits recently issued for new housing units, new residential developments underway or planned, available land, infrastructure, and other factors that can influence growth and development in terms of housing. And to do that, of course, we meet and discuss relevant matters not only with representatives of the district, but with each of your municipalities as well. We use a variety of techniques to give us a sense of what is happening in the district. We look at migration patterns of children and families, the relationship of public school enrollments to housing units, the role that non-public education plays in affecting the distribution of the totality of the school-age population between public and private, and whether your market share is growing or declining. The relationship between first graders entering and 12th graders departing the year before, which all comes together and paints a bit of a picture that kind of reinforces, in most cases, the review of the basic demographics. And of course, we look at great depth at your recent enrollments, your cohort survival rates, the grade progression experience, and so forth. We try to get our arms around everything that we learned in the process of reviewing and analyzing all of this. We develop a model that's specific to the circumstances and characteristics of Daniel Boone and generate aggregate projections by grade covering the next 10 years. The product is a detailed report with ample narrative, graphic and tabular support, and we make ourselves available for a public presentation on the findings and conclusions of our analysis. So, given our experience, we think we can offer Daniel Boone a set of enrollment projections that are as reasonable and realistic as possible based on the information that we have access to at the time that we undertake the study. And again, the product will serve the district well in its short and long-term planning. And just to help you save your breath, the first question is usually what can you expect in terms of accuracy, and we do track the enrollments that the enrollment projections that we issue, comparing them with the actual figures that result in all of the districts where we worked, and we calculate the mean absolute percentage error, which is like the gold standard for making judgments on the accuracy of enrollment projections. And for all the studies that we've undertaken during that 25 or 28-year period that we've been doing this, the average for the first 5 years is plus or minus 3%. Now that's an average. It's usually a 1% after the first year, 2% the second year, 5% in the fifth year. And the literature indicates that if you're at 5% or better, then those figures are acceptable. In years 6 through 10, the average goes up to about 7.7%. Perhaps a better point of reference in the case of Daniel Boone is what we did back in 1992-93. There, after 10 years, the average was plus or minus 2.7%, and excuse me, 3.9%. The previous study in the late 1980s was off by 2.7%. Again, after 10 years, when you're doing pretty good. If you're within 5% after 5 years, we were well within 5% after 10 years in both instances. So that's our quick overview. Much more eloquently presented in the materials in the folder, but we'll be happy to hear your comments or questions with regard to anything that we said or anything that we failed to say tonight relative to what you have in mind and how we would go about doing this type of study.
Does anybody have any questions to start?
Yeah, I will. When you do your study, when you do your public presentation, that's basically a statistical analysis, but the questions we get from the public about our declining enrollment, they try to apply their own value judgment to why enrollment is declining, either the quality of education, the board decisions, the high taxes. It could be any number of reasons. You're just doing a statistical study. You're not looking for reasons for the decline?
We're not looking for the root causes. What we can identify is how housing growth or lack of it has affected your enrollments, how birth patterns, which is births are probably the single most powerful, which of course in some cases flow from housing patterns, but how births have affected enrollments in the past and are likely to affect them in the future. But no, we can't trace an increase in the past or a decline in the past to wise or unwise decisions by the board.
So I mean, but that would be your response, is that you're looking at birth patterns, housing starts.
You're looking at macroeconomic factors,
yeah.
not.
It's like Jack Webb used to say, just the facts, man. You know, we're building this based on the environmental factors that influence enrollments, and not necessarily what may or may not have influenced the environmental factors, such as a successful football team or an unsuccessful football team, whatever whatever might have an effect on whether people choose to build here or not.
Do you want me to explain to Mike Miller who Jack Webb is?
I'm sorry. Are you? Dragnet.
Oh, jeez, no.
See,
Okay, sorry. Sometimes I forget how old I am.
and I'm old, so that's just like
I may never watch the show. Right.
What's the average time frame for completing one of these studies?
3 to 4 months in general, and that's influenced in part by the number of municipalities, and you have a relatively low number, which is good for you. Also, timing is an issue. If we were to begin something in the spring of course is past in this case, we would not suggest 3 to 4 months. We would suggest 2 months after October 1st figures become available, because that would give us the most recent information and give you essentially an extra year. So in this particular case, where we're almost at the start of the school year, 3 to 4 months is I think a good estimate. If we were to begin early September and could build up the basic information, and then when we get the October 1st figures for this year, assimilate them, and probably by Thanksgiving or the first week of December have a draft report. And a draft report essentially is a completed report subject to review on the part of the board and the administrators. So the time from submission of the draft until it becomes final is really controlled by the district as opposed to us. We control everything up until the issuing of the report, assuming we get the cooperation that we need, not only from the district, which would not be a question, but also from the municipalities with regard to information relative to housing and the like.
And what's, for a school district our size and the number of municipalities that we have, what's a number for a study like this?
16,000.
16. Okay.
Good point of reference. Doesn't mean it comes out exactly that number, but gives you an idea of what ballpark you're in.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So how did the studies hold up? Can you think of when you go back to like 2006 when the housing market kind of collapsed? I think that's probably not on the radar, or maybe it was for you guys. But so how did those projections hold up?
If the housing crash was on our radar, we would have been on Wall Street. Not surprisingly, the first 5 years held up because the momentum was already there. The housing was already built, and the younger families were moving in, and births existed that drive the next 5 years of kindergarten entry. So that, and of course the secondary is already there because they're just moving from the elementaries to the secondary grades. After that, it began to waver a bit, but surprisingly, it wasn't universal. I mean, there were some districts where the accuracy remained sound. In other cases, that didn't occur. And although we didn't do a thorough analysis of all of this, it's probably fair to say that the projections held up better in those districts that weren't going gangbusters on housing. The faster you were growing, the more you fell. And if you were just kind of plodding along, the crash, if you will, and the overall state of the economy and the mortgage industry and housing industry and so forth didn't seem to have that much of an effect. Or let's rephrase it, not as much of an effect as it did on those districts that were on fire.
And how do you, I think you mentioned the migration piece. So how do you I'm assuming migration, you mean like younger families moving in and the older families moving on, or?
Yeah, we're not in a position to measure one-to-one the migration of families. We can track through the municipal officials the new construction and the effect that sort of has. What is not as easily tracked is the turnover of mature housing. But what we look at is the end product. We look at the number of children that were born in the district for the 13 years, let's say, that would match up with this year's enrollment. And we determine how many children are in school in the public school system at this time, how many were born here, and that tells us that you've had in-migration to the public school system of maybe 20% or 30%. If you have 30% more kids in the school than were born here. Recognizing also that the non-publics probably have another good percentage, and that shows us what the effect in general is of in-migration. And of course we see it in the aggregate too, with total population, comparing births and deaths during the 10-year period with census figures before and census figures after. We can say that 1,000 people died and 1,000 people were born, and so that should be a wash. But if you have 2,000 more people in 2010 than you had in 2000, then that indicates an in-migration. All these things, to be clear, all these things factor in to our analysis. They factor in to our sense of what is happening and what has happened in the district and what is likely to happen in the district. But we can't connect the dots from all aspects of turnover of mature housing or in-migration, et cetera, to every change in enrollments that has occurred in the district. The biggest thing that we can point to, of course, is births, which again, in some cases, is a byproduct of the migration patterns.
Any questions, Jim? Okay.
I have a question for you, I guess.
Yeah.
When you first brought this up, didn't you say there was also a facilities piece?
Well, yes, and they can, I'm sure these guys can speak to it. When I was talking with Ms. Baker about, there were two things that we were looking at as a school district. One is enrollment. So we've had a declining enrollment since 2008, and our forecasting that we've just really implemented in the last year or two has indicated a continued declining enrollment through the next 5 years. And part and parcel with that, as we've talked about declining enrollments and how that impacts our classes and staffing and facilities use, you have the discussion about facilities. What's the capacity of the buildings that we currently have? What's the best allocation of those resources as it relates to enrollments and staffing, and transportation and districting and all that kind of stuff. So when I was speaking with Ms. Baker about it, she had actually referred me. I didn't bring my notepad in here, but it was to is it a Keith? Somebody, I forget what his.
Jim Thompson.
Jim Thompson, that's right. Jim Thompson, he's an AIA architect, or and used to design buildings and things of that nature. Because the only numbers we have for the capacity of our buildings is the number that's put on the sheet, on the plans for a building. It holds X number of students in this particular type of configuration. What we hear from some people is, well, that's not how we use our buildings. So what's the real utility value of a building in terms of capacity? Is it more? Is it less? We're being told by by certain cohorts in the community that it's less. So how do you verify that? I traded a couple of voicemails with him, but was unable to connect with him. And my understanding from speaking with Ms. Baker was that is a separate study and analysis and a separate cost to get that done. That's not part of the enrollment study piece. And you feel free to jump in and editorialize what I just said.
You've got it right.
Okay.
This is the foundation.
Right.
Jim or any other person that has his qualifications and experience can begin to analyze your buildings with regard to how they're actually being used during the school year.
Mm-hmm.
Not just walking through them in the summer and seeing empty rooms, but seeing how they're used from day to day and so forth, and get a sense of what the true capacity is, and then wed that with our analysis and said, this is your utilization level at this point in time. And 2, 4, 6, 8 years from now, they're either going to be utilized more intensely or less intensely, depending upon what the enrollment projections.
Sure. Now, does he, when he's doing that, I mean, I guess I suppose the other question is, in terms of efficiency, right? So, are we using our buildings efficiently? I guess is the bigger question. I mean, if an architect designs a building, he's designing it for a specific type, to be used a certain way, right? And so that would lend itself to a specific number of students and faculty and administrators in a building. If we choose to use a building in a different way, that may be more efficient than the number that's on the plan, or it may be less efficient than the number that's on the plan. And so I guess the second question I would have is, as Jim or whoever is looking at these buildings, what has been your experience in terms of do they come in and say, well, look, you guys are doing this all wrong. This is where you should have this, thing, and this is where this should be, and you're going to free up this amount of space, which allows you to do whatever. I mean, I don't know how you guys do that.
I guess it's a question of what you ask them to do. Now, if you ask them to assess your present capacity and utilization and what it's likely to be down the road based on a good solid set of enrollment projections, he'll review the building usage, each room as it's being used, what purpose, et cetera, et cetera. Special education is different from 7th grade math, et cetera, and also analyze the condition of the buildings, because that goes hand in hand. But I don't think it's a giant step to ask the additional question that you're asking is this right? Are we doing the right thing? And in Jim's case, not only has he been doing this for many, many years, worked with Hazel Arch for a long time, but he's also a board member at Harrisburg City School District. So he lives it on a day-to-day basis in that capacity as well. But I don't think we want to go too far in speaking specifically to
Sure.
what he would do and how he would do it. But we can tell him to respond to your calls in the future, or your emails, whatever effort you're using to contact you.
Well, I guess that's where I guess that's one of the questions we have for you guys and your experiences. And I don't know if you can or can't speak with him, or if it's left-hand, right-hand sort of situation. Or you guys are doing one thing, he does something completely different. But, you know, one of the things the board here has noticed is, like, for example, at our high school, we have an annex, and there's a question of, you know, there's a lot of space up there, and this space has sort of been moved into because it's available, as opposed to whether you really needed it. And so now people, you know, the argument could be made, well, yeah, we're using it, so we need that space, but do you really need the space? If you didn't have it, would you do something differently, right? And maybe do it better. And so I guess that's the other question that the board's, because that could be more of a political football that's thrown back and forth, as opposed to somebody coming in objectively and saying, no. This is how you should be using the space, the resources you have available for the population that you have and the needs that you have. And this is how you would organize it.
Are you able to give us a ballpark figure on the cost of that separate study?
No. I think Jim would have to speak to that with regard to, again, what all these
Variables.
what you really need to know
Right.
as a result of his presence. Not, it sounds like it's a lot more than just what is our capacity and our utilization and what will it be down the road.
Yeah.
As I said, a natural byproduct of that is when you're assessing your buildings is, you know, what kind of condition are they in, what kind of work do they need, or what kind of work are they going to need, et cetera, et cetera. And again, hand in hand with all of that is how they're being used and whether they're, as you put it, used most efficiently. But a lot of that is driven, or at least influenced, by the nature of the educational program. So he really has to get involved with, get sufficient knowledge of the educational program and how that has dictated how you use the buildings, or whether the buildings dictate the educational program, or the educational program dictates how you use the buildings.
I think it's the willy-nilly approach. I think what happens is people are in a building and they use it just because they can, or there's this here, so we're going to take that space and we're going to use it for this particular use. And if something changes, then they kind of, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think people sit down and look at a plan and say, boy, we got to lay this out, right? And this is how we're going to, here are our educational needs, this is what we need to do. I mean, like, you know, I come from a real estate background, so with industrial buildings or anything else, you have tenants who come in to lease a space. They think very carefully about how that space is going to be used and maximized in terms of their business systems and the flow of a product through that space and out the door. And I wondered, I don't think that thought process is brought to.
I think he can assist with that, provided he can pick up on the evolution of why this room that is perfect for X is being used for Y, or Z, or both.
Some of what's happened here, I think, it's human nature, empty space has
Sure.
to be filled.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think that's interesting too. When they design, like when I don't know if you even know, but I think you were around when they did Knox scenery. I mean,
Came in after.
do they just look at it as, well, we need a school for 500 kids, and the architect kind of, or I mean, do they look at it, well, you know, you have approximately 150 first graders and 200, and design the space for the, or is it just
they gave me two options.
per kids, you know?
There was an option to have an addition or build it. They opted to build it fully out. But the original plans had an option to build less and then have the capacity to expand.
Well, I guess what I'm thinking, like, are they thinking like, well, there's 5 classrooms for first grade and 7 for, like, I don't, because what we're hearing is, well, yeah, you can have these many kids, but it's not conducive to the amount of kids we have in a class. Well, then it would make sense to me if you're designing a building, you take the policy for your class sizes and you design your building so you have, it's tailored to those numbers.
But even you weren't on the board when they decided to build it.
No, I got in when they were finishing the building up.
I don't, but it's a very interesting question on how does the use of the building
Well, I
come
just know
about?
my experience in dealing with architects is when we're designing, whether it's apartments or it's assisted living or something else, you think about the total number of beds. You're constrained by the space, the size of the lot, those types of things. And you got built-in parking. You have all the municipal restrictions, right? And then that impacts your building envelope. And then you're looking at, what can you do within those constraints? And now you're talking about number of beds or number of classrooms, number of students, and then the alternative spaces that you need to provide, right? Whether it's hallways, it's elevators, it's cafeterias, it's common spaces and things of that nature. And then once you get in and you start using that facility, you find out that you didn't need that, whatever it was, room is completely useless because there's no functionality or utility to it in terms of the way that building works. Or you wish you had 10 more of a specific room because that's
Right.
that space works really well for what it is you're trying to accomplish. So I'm not sure how they are, that's the process I've been through multiple times. And then once you refine it, you have a plan that works and you tend to replicate that over and over
I
again.
mean, you are right about efficiency. I remember in 2005 we opened a brand new sewer treatment plant and the operator didn't want to run it the way it was designed to run. Well, it decreases the efficiency, and you can't really blame the engineer because, well, we didn't design it to work that way. So, but costs go up because chemicals change or this changes or that. So that is an interesting question. Is it being utilized efficiently?
Yeah.
I would say in this day and age, I assume you're being tasked to do these studies due to declining enrollment. That's the nature of schools right now. But over the years, can you gauge roughly how many studies have been done for based on whether they need to build new schools versus so increasing enrollment versus declining enrollment, or?
No. No, you're right. It's gone in waves. But even in today's waves, there are districts with growing enrollments. But there are quite a few with declining enrollments. But the middle ground is whether we're increasing or we're decreasing. There may be a need to close buildings and build new ones just because of the educational program. And so the documentation is needed for that, even though the number of children involved might not change. There's still some districts that justify closings and additional construction because of condition, because of educational program, and so forth. I think we can probably recognize a handful of districts that specifically came and said, we need projections for PlanCon because blah, blah, blah. More often than not, it's probably better for us to have not been told why the district needs the projections other than sound long-range planning. So whether it's up or down, it doesn't much matter to us. The numbers are the numbers. Now, what the district discussed in those smoke-filled rooms of old with regard to why they needed to move in this direction is another matter.
Dr. Robbins was in the smoke program, right?
Yeah, he actually did, but not on school property.
Very good problem.
All right. Any other questions? Lauren, do you have any questions? Mr. Hurley?
Nope.
Mr. Miller? Nothing? Okay. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I guess if you can leave us some additional information, we can share that with the board and at our next meeting, and we'll be in touch.
And we can produce a
Thank you.
proposal in a couple of days and get that to you if it's necessary.
Okay.
All right?
Yeah, we'll talk about that, I guess, right now, whether or not that's something that we wanted to get done. That way, if there's something for the board to consider at the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it.
So on.
Take care.
Actually,
No,
we did
hopefully this one passes free and all.
pass one for Warren, pass one for you, keep one for me, and we'll save 2 for the some other board members. Maybe we can scan these in and email them out to the board. Yeah, just so that everybody gets one of these things. I guess, what's the feedback from the board? Is this something we want to, from the committee, is this something we want to get a proposal from them for? Just because if they're talking about getting the ball rolling in September with October enrollments coming out, or at least come August, if somebody asks us how much does this cost and so on and so forth, we actually have a formal proposal that we can hand to the board for their consideration.
Well, I could definitely hindsight 2020. I kind of wish maybe the back in the early 2000s they would have been employed.
Yeah.
Because I can certainly see their value before you drop $35 million on a new school. What I'm wondering now, though, is should we engage an architect first to find out exactly what, the architect might come back and say, you're already at the point where you should close the school. Well, we don't need their numbers quite yet. You know what I mean? So I'm wondering if it makes sense to go that route first.
Well,
Would
I
the
don't
architect
necessarily-
look at the forecasted enrollment and say,
Well-
hey, look, you need to be planning for this, and
Well,
this is...
they might not look at the forecasted, but they might say, with this school and this school, your capacity is X. And we're already at X.
I just say, to me, the more important piece of the study is the architect's view on how to efficiently utilize it. Because when we have forecasted numbers, and I don't know that he would use our numbers, but we do. In our own minds, we have those numbers. And I don't know if he would do a piece without doing that piece, but to me, I think it's more important to know how we should be using the schools or what the capacity of the schools is. Because without that, to me, it doesn't matter. If we don't do both or we don't do that one, I don't think that piece means anything to us, because what do we do with it?
Other than historically, you can look at how many kids were in a particular building and say, like this building, for example, you had, I don't know, pick a number, 423 kids in this building. And, we're looking at closing a building down. You can say, well, we only have 322 now. So clearly we know this building can have another 100 students in it.
That is true. We'll have to find the person that was in the building at the time that knew how it was set up.
But I'm just saying, we have the enrollments for
Right.
the buildings.
No, I agree, because we can do that now. We can look at, when you have teachers and the publics, and you're like, well, that's not how the classroom works. You don't understand. You're right. If it worked 20 years ago or 15 years ago, you'd think it would work now. But
Well, not even 5 years ago. We had 4,008 students in 2008 at our peak. It was like in February or whatever, 2008. I remember looking at the enrollment number, tweaked over 4,000, and then slowly began to decline after that. So clearly we had room in the buildings for that many students. And in middle school, for example, used to be, I forget, I don't have my enrollment numbers in here, but it was like almost 900 and some odd students. And
We were around we got up to 960s.
960 something students. We're down at 810 or whatever the number is now.
So that's where I think we need the architect piece to come in and say, because one of your suggestions was, do we move 5th grade to middle school? Well, then if that's the case, then how do we do that?
So here's I don't want this to seem like that's my idea. That's just a idea, right? It's just a idea. There's been discussion of moving, 5th grade into the middle school, but then taking 8th grade and putting it up at the high school, right? So do you do both? Do you do one? Which one do you do? Just do the 5th grade piece, or do you do the 8th grade piece, or do you do both? I don't know what the right answer is. That's where you guys come in. The administration needs to come in and talk about curriculum and this is our approach to education and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we're
Agreed.
making a
Agreed.
philosophical
Right.
decision
Yeah.
as to how we're going to educate our kids.
But yeah, the architect would be the one to tell us if you want to keep 5 through 8, is it possible? You know, this doesn't, again, my opinion, you know, I don't know if we need to spend that money yet. I think I'd rather get the other piece answered first, then see if that money is needed to be spent.
I guess the only other question I have is timing is always an issue, right? So we have a budget looming over us, and we know that the savings to closing one of these buildings is, you know, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 a year. Every year we wait, it's $800,000 that's goes out the door that we may not have had to have spent. So my other concern is, you know, we want to do it right, but we also want to make sure we're doing it to a timeline that.
I agree, and, you know, especially after, I said after our facilities meeting, we're looking at capital needs.
Well,
I
that goes
mean,
part and parcel
right.
with this, right?
No, but I still think you need the other piece of the puzzle.
I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, right.
I don't
I
know
don't,
whether
I
this
don't
is.
have an issue with getting a proposal for this.
Yeah.
I just don't know that I would want to move, personally, I don't know that I want to move forward with that, approving that piece until we know. And, you know, if it comes back to the other piece is $60,000 or, you know, I don't know, then maybe we just figure it out on our
personally,
own.
I am kind of interested because, you know, I think you have started to see the birth rate come back. You have started to see marriages happen again. And in my neighborhood alone, I started to see a little turnover. We've got some babies in the community, new folks have moved in, you know, so to me that's interesting. I'm curious if that's more just what I see in my neighborhood, or if that's more what we're seeing overall. But
So is it a sequential thing, or is it a simultaneous?
Well, it could be simultaneous.
That's where I'm going with it.
No, it could be. But I want to know what the other piece is before I
Right.
vote on that piece. I'm okay with getting a proposal.
I hear Dave and Tamara's concerns, and I don't disagree with him. I mean, I'm not totally sold, since we do have projections.
Yeah, I mean,
But I'd like to hear the cost of the facilities piece, and I also think something that's important, I think it should go to the full board, not just the committee.
yeah, no, I was suggesting if we were going to,
Get a proposal for the full, so we can take the whole.
to get a proposal doesn't cost us anything, right? And then you,
So a
so,
proposal, and
on the
and I have
24th,
them
you-
come back and make a presentation to everybody, rather than us trying to explain, they're
Sure.
going to give us enrollment numbers.
I mean, I can truly see that the value before you build a new school. These folks should really be employed by a district. Because 16,000 versus $30 million, well spent.
well, I think also 16,000 versus $800,000 in
Right.
savings isn't chump change either.
Would the same reasoning apply to the reverse?
Absolutely it
Really?
would. And we don't want to
This
close
is
a building
powerful
down.
data point.
Yeah, we don't want to close a building down and turn around a year later and open it up again. I mean, like, you know, politically, that's
Agreed. Yeah,
chaos
yeah,
in the
yeah.
community,
Yeah,
so.
I think the question is 16,000 or 30,000 or whatever the total study's going to cost. Is there going to be a return on investment on that money?
I don't think you can, here's my opinion, 15 grand, 30 grand, whatever it is, and a $53 million budget is this big, and the value of the information that we get and that future boards have as a result of this type of a study, I think is really quite valuable in terms of making decisions.
And it's ironic that they did one in the 80s and one in the 90s, but decided not to do one in 2000
Yeah.
when they built all the schools. You know.
Well, there's a lot of that happened here. I mean, at the meeting Dave and I went to about labor, we met the attorney who worked with the board in the 90s. They stopped using him in the first 10 years of
2000.
2000.
That seems to have been when the wheels went off the bus.
Maybe, and I don't know, this is just a suggestion, but if we could get, if this guy could give us a ballpark number of what a study would cost, and then maybe he could come and the other two come back to the whole board and present to the whole board, and then we'd have the ability, if we wanted to move forward in September, we could. And maybe they could come to the September committee of the whole. and do a
Okay.
presentation. Or, I mean, or even next one, I don't care, or the next, but I don't know if they could come that quick, you know. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that. But. Or I guess you have a finance committee.
Well, it's just, after sitting on these boards for so long, it's my gut tells me that the longer you kick these sort of things down, the farther down the road you kick them, the longer it takes to get it moving, and then it's a year, it's 2 years later before it gets implemented, and then, it's all that money is water over the dam, and you realize in hindsight what could have been accomplished.
I'm okay with pulling the trigger next month if they like what the guy has to say. To me, it's two pieces together.
All right, so I guess what I'm hearing is get a hold of this guy, Jim Thompson, and see if we can't get him to the committee of the voting meeting. When's your facilities meeting next?
Oh, the 8th? Well, that's true, too.
Well, you have a meeting on the 8th.
It's a Tuesday because Monday's Labor Day. Let's see, if they can come to that, that's fine too.
Okay.
I should see, I don't know if you can make that one, but.
Well, I can certainly see what I can do to change some things around. I think this is pretty important. So, okay, well, part and parcel of that discussion was the second line item, which was a school closing. I guess, so let's just keep the conversation going. Administratively, I know you guys have sort of had your hands full with, transition. What steps, if any, have been taken in terms of considering our options as a school district in terms of a 5 through 8 model or a 5 through 7 and 8 through 12?
Let me give you an idea where we're at in the process. Okay. First, we've taken a look at the middle school itself. We've looked at our current class sizes in 5th grade to see if we can actually fit the kids in the building. We can fit the kids into the building. We come to that determination. Now, there's some caveats there that we need to think about, and there's some repercussions that we have to be aware of. However, when you talk about physical space, there is enough because of the decrease in class sizes at the middle school that we can fit them in there. Now, what would happen, and with things we need to think about,
That's with the 8th grade, right?
That's with our 8th grade. We could have a 5 to 8 model in there theoretically.
Okay.
What would happen as a result of that, we would be in a situation where our computer labs, at least 2 of our computer labs would need to be turned into regular classrooms. The way around that problem is you put the computer labs on carts. We have computer labs on carts. They exist in schools and stuff like that. So that is a way around to get the classroom space that we need to make that happen. So there's a little bit of cost associated with that, but it's doable, yeah.
The computer labs themselves, these are still filled with the desktops?
They're filled with desktops. They changed over to laptops now, but we need to get like a charging station. There's a specific thing that allows them to recharge and get the wires. Bottom line is we can accomplish this. It is doable.
So instead of taking the kids out of the classroom, move them down the hallway to
the computer
lab, you bring the computer lab to the classroom, hand out the laptops, and they do what they need to do.
Yeah, and we do. I know we have at the middle school. We have one of those, and we certainly need to keep the same number of computers that we have because you're going to actually need a few more computers. You have 5th grade in there now, but we can get them from other buildings. But my point is, we can create two more classes that we would need in order to do that. So from that standpoint, we can fit the kids in the building. We check the number of lockers because of the decrease in enrollment. There are enough lockers in the building, so we don't need to add any more lockers. Again, a couple years ago, that wouldn't have been the case because the enrollments in the middle school and the other grades were higher. That's where it is right now. Now, some things that would happen and some of these issues we don't have resolved at this point in time, but we would be in a situation with lunches. We'd have to figure out a way. If we were to add a 4th lunch in there, what you would have to do, you're going to end up with a lunch pretty early in the morning or very, very late in the afternoon. That can be, again, it's not insurmountable. The high school does have a lunch very early, is my understanding, but that can get problematic with younger kids. We need to be aware of that, so we're aware of the concerns that may come from parents, but that would stick one of our lunches probably in their 4th period area, which is about like some 10:30, 10:15-ish, which is pretty early in the morning.
Yeah.
Just things to be aware of. The other piece, and again, it's not necessarily insurmountable, but I want to talk to our school safety experts.
Can I go back to lunch real quick? So how is lunch done now? Fifth or sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth grade all go at different times?
Yes.
So you don't have seventh and eighth graders together, and you wouldn't have fifth and sixth graders together?
No, I wouldn't do that. There's a couple reasons, just from peer relationship standpoints, but the other thing is the cafeterias are pretty full in terms when you look. Now, it doesn't mean you can't jam more seatings in there, but you do want to be careful about that because you start to it gets too crowded. It's already 4 or 5 adults supervising 200 kids. You don't want to jam too many kids in there.
Right.
And I know it's not. And I will say I wasn't in there as much last year, but it does get pretty crowded. You know, in the cafeteria when it's full, and we probably want to separate the different grades.
I think it becomes more acceptable to the public if the fifth graders are separate.
Agreed.
And if we're not using terms like jamming them in.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, seriously.
That's a good point.
I mean, that's one of the concerns is overcrowding and all that.
Absolutely, 100% agreed with that. There's some simple things like we want to get our if we were to bring in like a fifth grade up, we want to really work on a transitioning program between the elementaries and high school. We want to work on that anyway, but it's something we want to be more robust because of the age differences. The fifth through eighth grade model does exist out there. It's not something we're inventing at Daniel Boone. It's not developmentally wrong. Communities that have done this before, there is some angst among the community and the parents and stuff like that. But the model does exist.
Yeah, Tredyffrin Easttown has it. They've had it for
and Fleetwood does it. And
does it.
5-day is not like something that's real radical or anything of that nature. It's a different choice. Obviously 6 to 8 is also a common model.
There's also K through 8 too.
And so and that's less common. You see that more in city schools and types like that. But you definitely see the 5 to 8 model and 6 to 8 model. They're probably the two most prevalent models that I see out there. The other piece, just to make you some things, and we haven't resolved all this piece, but I know that there's issues here. We'd have to look real hard at our curriculum, and let me try to put this in a nutshell for you. Our fifth grade minor subjects or special area subjects they have things like library and things like that we don't have as a pure subject in a middle school. They don't have as many. We have more at the middle school because the developmental nature of what middle schools are supposed to be doing. And they're also operating on a 5-day cycle versus a 6-day cycle. Now, again, those things, we can probably work through some of those issues, but we'd have to look at issues like, okay, how are we going to, we have Encore staff who's already split between different elementary schools, pushing, how are we going to get them to the middle school to teach the fifth grade if we were to keep that curriculum as is? And then if we weren't going to do that, how will we change maybe our sixth grade curriculum so that we can use those teachers to teach the fifth graders, and then because it would be different subjects, so there would have to be, those things would have to be looked at in much greater detail. There definitely would be, and my point of saying this, there's definitely going to be an effect on the curriculum piece, either an expansion of the fifth grade or a reduction of the sixth grade. We got to figure out logistically how to get those. It's just where we are in the process. You guys asked us to look into this whole thing. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Have you guys looked at what other schools are doing and say, TE is a great school district.
Absolutely, it's a great school.
How do you get, what's the curriculum for 5 through 8 in that particular?
What I'm saying right now, and we haven't talked to TE, we have talked to like Fleetwood, for example, who's more local, and I've talked to Twin Valley a little bit because they do that type of model, and it's different. What I'm saying is it's different than our model right now. Basically, we have a fifth grade the way they do their specials is very different from the way we do specials, and the amount of time we use in specials between fifth and sixth grade is dramatically different. Basically, what you're looking at is about 86 minutes of special time, which by nature, middle school is supposed to be exploratory. Kids are learning different things and finding what their interests are, whether it's art, music, band, things like that. And then, but our number of minutes that we use in fifth grade is dramatically different, and also the subjects are different.
Sure.
Art being the obvious one. At the middle school, we have subjects that are very good, like family and consumer sciences, which is like home ec. We have technology technology education, which is probably one of our really good classes that we have at the middle school. They don't have those things at the elementary school. And we got to talk about like where they fit, you know, in that whole picture. It would be a matter of changing our models and looking at it differently in terms of how again, we haven't dug into that piece. We haven't had enough time to dig into that deeply, but it's something we really need to, if we're serious about doing this, we're going to really need to dig into that very deep and decide what's the best approach to do that and make sure we maximize the education there.
We have had several meetings between the elementaries and middle school to get that ball rolling.
Yeah.
So we have gotten that started. And in essence, what Rob's describing is 2 schools in a school.
Right.
That's basically what you're getting.
Are there,
5, 6, 7, 8.
I got to believe there's some synergies or some advantages to having, you know, all of 5th grade in one building and at the middle school too, right? That we can capitalize on, right? I mean, there's some positives to this too.
Mm-hmm. And I don't want to portray this as negative, or I just want to give you facts in terms of what we'll be dealing with. In terms of, if you put all of your staff into one place, yeah, there should be certainly collaborative to make sure we're all on the same page. Also, I mean, you don't end up with, when you look at your class size issues, like we were looking at yesterday with that grid, sometimes it depends on where those kids fall, depends on whether you do this section or not. That could happen very easily.
Sure.
You could end up with a cost savings, or you may or may not. It just depends on
I'm not, put cost savings aside, I'm thinking in terms of curriculum, there's got to be, I mean, everything I've read about the 5 through 8 model, there's a lot of positives to it. Which is the reason why school districts haven't not migrated away from it when a lot of others did, right?
I guess, I mean, I think, what I'm taking from it is, right, it's not that there's negatives, it's just that our curriculum isn't really structured to that, so they may have to overhaul that whole curriculum.
Yeah, that's what you're hearing there.
So, if you talk to Twin Valley or Fleetwood or one of those on how they do it, it's not, it may be that the whole curriculum structure is different, so.
And those are things we need to dig into more deeply. This is just where we're at right now.
Yeah.
I've reached out to the high school, and I need to spend more time on this particular piece, and because this right now is just what they're using classroom wise. Right now they told me they have 7, 8, 9. Looks like they have about 10 vacant classrooms, but the question is that because, like you guys were saying, is it because the space is there or not? So I need to dig into that more. Okay, now what do we actually have to have if we were in a situation? So we vaguely touched on the high school piece, at least from my standpoint. That's kind of where I'm at right now.
With on that, just briefly, when we were elected to the board, they took us on a tour of all the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
And walking through the high school, I asked Tom Hankel, I said, I'm just curious, when they built the middle school and took the middle school out of here, where did the high school end? And he said, there's doors you passed back there.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And I said, well then, why do we have all these classrooms out here? We haven't grown. Mm-hmm. And his answer was, basically we had the space, we decided to use it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, all right. Okay, well, I guess...
So we made some progress.
Yeah, I mean, I guess where I was coming from this as a board member is that, you know, I don't want the buildings or necessarily the enrollment to wag the dog as it relates to curriculum, right? So shifting to a 5 through 8 model or a 5 through 7 and 8 at the high school, whatever it's going to be, has got to be the right move for the district long term, right? I mean,
we need to pay attention to that too, in terms of like when you look at the long term numbers. You don't want to bring them in there and then have to bring them out in 2 years later.
Yeah, I mean, long term enrollment's going to impact that, but also just in terms of, you know, the curriculum and the way, as you're saying, the way we're teaching these kids. You know, that's a philosophical change, or it's a structural change, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing the right thing I don't want to lose sight of that piece, right? That just because there's a room available, hey, let's not just move the 8th graders up there because there's space.
Wonderful. Yeah,
you know what I mean?
I think we should take that into account. The one other piece I want to say is, and it doesn't mean, we always need to look at, can we do things better and in better ways, and we certainly should as a group. We have had success at the 6-8 model at our middle level historically in terms of the academic achievement there. So that just needs to be in the back of our mind, but 5 to 8, when you look at the research, is a perfectly developmentally appropriate model. There's nothing that's it is we're not reinventing a wheel. It exists elsewhere. It exists elsewhere within our county itself. And so it's not developmentally inappropriate to do that. You can still have a very nice middle level program, 5 to 8. It's early adolescence. That's what we deal with. The primary function of middle school is to transition from elementary school to high school and get kids prepared for that. And you can do that in a 5 to 8 model very effectively, as well as to 6 to 8. And the question is, we have to look at the curriculum pieces. We got to look at, the lunches and all these pieces. But we've done a little bit of work on this. This is kind of where we're at right now in the process. You guys asked us to take a look at it.
No, I appreciate that.
When you have the certifications, do they go K through 8?
It's changed over the years to answer those questions. Basically, for the most part, what you're looking at is a 7th grade and 8th grade teacher has to have a secondary certification. They're subject specialists because of the content specific. If you're teaching algebra, the content's much more rigorous. 6th grade, you can teach 6th grade on an elementary education certification. More recently, and by the way, when you look at hiring for the middle level, one of the things you look for is people with double certifications, because that gives you lots more flexibility and efficiencies in your scheduling. In an ideal world, that's if you can get a really highly qualified teacher who has a double content area, like you're an English teacher, they basically have 2 degrees, and a history teacher, boy, that person becomes really valuable. And we fight the TEs for people like that for those reasons. But on the other hand, PD recognizing this to their credit, they've created another certification for just middle level people. Not all the colleges have adopted that, but it's basically a middle level certification which allows them to teach multiple subjects. It gives them more kind of the hybrid between elementary and high school. But that's more recent. We don't see a lot of those out there right now because not all the schools are providing that.
For the specials at the elementary level, do those teachers have certifications in that subject area in elementary school?
In the specials, the phys ed teacher is a phys ed person, and the art teacher is an art person, and they have to have that certification.
And they're usually K to 12.
Okay, so all right, so that's what I was trying to. They can't really cross over, but if the person, the music, whoever's certified in music at a middle school could teach the 5th grade music.
Correct.
Or the art. It's just a matter of how do you divide up those.
That's correct. So this tech ed person could do tech ed with 5th grade if we chose to do that. My art, my home ec, if we chose to do different things with them, we can use them in that capacity. And likewise, we can use the elementary people in that capacity also at the middle level. Great question on that.
Just a couple thoughts then.
Sure.
So, because the drumbeat we've heard over and over again is we keep taking away, right? So, and this I think will be perceived as another takeaway. But so if we know we're going to save X number of dollars, is there a way we can utilize some of those savings to give back? And maybe that's by starting to get some one-on-one computers. We're going to take the computer labs away, but maybe we get some one-on-one computers instead of the rolling carts. Maybe we can bring back foreign languages. Maybe now K through 4 will have more special time. So when we're taking the 5th grade out, maybe specials will be able to increase those a little bit more if we keep the same staff. So maybe specials can go back up again.
That's what I was alluding to, the positives of this, which is if you're pulling 5th grade out, I don't know whether that makes it easier to you have certain economies of scale, right? So from 5 to 8, you're going to realize some benefits there in terms of the distribution of work amongst the faculty, which may be able to increase educational times and things of that nature as it relates to some of these specials, and same thing from K through 4 or whatever, because now, you've taken these people out of the mix who are spread thinner, now they're consolidated over a smaller group, right? And at a central location. So we're not, and there can be transportation benefits to this too, and some other things. I don't know.
I think all the district has seen has been cuts, takeaways, but the money hasn't, the savings hasn't gone anywhere but keeping the taxes down.
Or keeping what we have.
As
opposed to making additional cuts, right?
You could make additional cuts, but their argument is you could have raised taxes to
I understand.
So I'm wondering if we have another, savings, we can plow some of that money back into giving back. So we can have both save money, and then plow a little bit back to sweeten the offer.
Well, I would think that any kind of transition like this, you're going to have to invest some money to make it work, right? I mean, I guess what was going through my head is you got all these computer labs, and I remember the time where, the budget was whatever it was, $750,000 or almost $1 million for IT, and we were buying these, I forget what it was, these carts that you could link into China that we weren't using, that were $35,000 a piece, and just ridiculous nonsense. But nowadays, instead of spending $3,000 on a desktop, you can buy a desktop for $300. You get a laptop for a couple $100. So, it's not a stretch to go and buy whatever number of, laptops it is and just have them in the darn classroom. I mean, you have to ship them around on a cart from one place to the next. You have 25 iPads sitting in a box in each classroom that kids can get on and do stuff with. I mean,
Well, that's what we want to do in our building too. We want to convert the labs over to classrooms. Because the carts, they just make way more sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That way you're bringing the entire cart into the classroom. Every kid has a laptop. Labs are a dinosaur.
Right. I mean, technology is moving towards tablets and other things too, and phones, and they're not moving to desktops.
Well, we'll just send them home with the kids.
It may eventually come to that. We'll put little cameras on them, right? And have an issue like we had around.
Everybody.
Okay, any other thoughts on that subject? No? Nothing? Lauren?
No, you just rushed on it there, and of course, the night I arrived at Boone was the night of the Birdsboro hearing.
That was what I call it, the hearing?
Well, that's what was scheduled to be here. Yeah, I was told to be there at 6 o'clock for a short meeting when I'd be hired. And then there was gonna be
Short meeting.
And then there was going to be a hearing at 7 regarding closure of the building.
Kind of like my first meeting.
While I was waiting for my first interview over at the Brook Building, I read an article regarding all this. I had a vague idea of what might be going on.
It was a test.
You should have gotten out.
Could have stayed, he still showed up.
It was a litmus test, Lauren.
I think I've told somebody, I left my wife at the motel. I said, when I get back, I'll be back by about 7. We'll go out for dinner. I got home at 11:30 and went to Waffle House. So, anyway.
Wait, we have a Waffle House?
Yeah.
No, that's over by the motel where we were staying.
Oh, I was going to say,
No.
wait, I didn't know we had a Waffle House.
Anyway, with the transportation aspect of it, and this, now you're going to be bringing 120 Birdsboro students to middle school, which they're going to be there in a year anyway.
Well, we pick up 6th grade kids too, right? I mean,
We pick up 6th grade kids and 7th grade
Okay.
kids and 8th grade kids.
So the
maybe
goal
add a
is
bus somewhere and you
it'd be
bring runs
interesting
up
to
or something.
Put the scenario together and see what happens with the routes.
And there'd be less buses on the elementary.
Right.
Right.
So it might be washed.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Okay. Budget, autopsy. It's a little early for that, but maybe Lauren, you can just kind of walk us through when we can expect to kind of do our year in review and
September. Yeah, the initial audit work was completed 2 weeks ago. The final week is the week of the 31st, prior to the start of school. So we're going to have a pretty good idea where we stand. So you give me your date for your September. We've got the 15th or 16th that Wednesday, but that's going to be RBC. Here speaking.
it's the 11th, or is it whatever that date is?
No, I think you sent out the 6th.
Did I?
Yeah.
I probably did.
16th Wednesday.
16th, Wednesday, yeah.
Yeah. Now, do you want to incorporate all that in the same evening?
Yeah, why not? I can't imagine RBC is
So
going
that's
to take
when
all night, so we'll
that's
just do
when
those.
We'll plan on having that ready, and I'll present the budget planning calendar that night.
Yeah.
I already had a cabinet meeting, and I've already taken the administration through that. So, all right, so we'll plan on Wednesday the 16th. We'll have all that ready for you.
Okay.
What time is starting?
6? No,
I think we're starting early.
I mean, I'm not sure what time we told, if we set a time yet with RBC, but we could
work either side of
I
it.
mean, if we, huh?
We'll buy a beverage.
I said, I'm not gonna be here all night, that's my birthday, so.
Oh, it is.
Like
We'll
2
have a cake
hours.
here.
I said, we can go out later and we can talk about it all
So
night.
it's 6, is it?
Yeah, we can set whatever time we want. You want to meet earlier?
I mean, I can be here by 5:30, 5:15, I don't know.
That
what
makes you gonna
that-
want dinner too.
Yeah, all right, 6.
I'll buy my own dinner.
6 o'clock. We shoot for 6 o'clock that night. That way, obviously, look, if you gotta go, you don't need to hang around. We'll cover
No,
it
I'd
all.
love to spend my,
I know you
I'd
do.
love
but
to spend the day with you guys.
We'll cover it all again
Really, Connor.
at the board meeting, so. Okay. And then the other thing I asked, of these guys to take a look at was working capital requirements. One of the things that we've come up and as part of discussion a couple of years ago was how much money do we need as a school district between July 1st and when the local taxes start rolling in August, which is right about now. It's usually when we get the first wave, and then as you get to the 18th, 20th, we tend to get about 80 or 90% of the tax revenue from local taxes, which carry us through the rest of the year. And this will have a direct bearing on, capital, set aside in our general reserve budget, or general reserve accounts, as we move forward and discuss budgets. So in the past, it was right around 2 million, and then the number started going down lower and lower and lower as we had made adjustments to our budget and savings and those types of things. I think the last time I saw the numbers were about $1.5 million. I don't know where we are today, but I thought I would bring that up. So he's going to go look for that.
He's making copies. I thought he'd make copies.
Okay. And then the other thing was, you guys are looking at was in terms of cash flow as it relates to the state providing the $7 or $8 million that we need, that we typically get from them for the school.
We've got it laid out 2 different scenarios. One with the state not funding us for 6-8 months.
Well, I mean, we should be all right because like, when we get to 2 weeks from now, we're going to have like $30 million in the bank from local taxes, correct? I mean,
Yeah, we got a good chunk in we got 3.3 million in July. Usually we get another 22, 21, 22 in August. So
Right.
we're fine, but we've got it laid out there.
I mean, that gets you through till whatever it is, March.
I told Lauren when I got here, as I left the house, my wife had the news on, and there was a clip of Governor Wolf trashing the legislature for not going along with his plan. So all that's going to do is increase the stalemate, because I'm sure they'll have a rebuttal. And
Right, and it's gonna, I mean, the districts, it's really unheard, I would think, would be the big cities district.
Can we charge them interest for the money that we get? There was back whenever the last year was, a number of districts went with the tax revenue anticipation notes and whatnot, and because they were forced,
Yeah.
Right.
and but there was no recovery.
File a class action lawsuit against the state government.
But if you don't have your budget passed by June 30th, you're in trouble. We don't have ours.
Technically, by law,
I mean,
we
they were
don't
going to
have
trouble
to pass our budgets for 15 days after they approve theirs. So if we really wanted to,
Huh.
we really wanted to be.
We should have done that.
We should have. I didn't realize that. I thought we had to have ours
Should have
set
just not
regardless.
passed it and rolled with it until 15 days after.
Yeah.
It would
But
be
what,
interesting if we did a class action.
What we have here is
Mandamus
just,
action.
first page is with state revenues, assuming they're passed on schedule.
So that first line actually answers my question. You need about $1.3 million in working capital in the beginning of the year. And a lot of that has to do with debt service.
But
Because we have a payment in July, and then we have another payment like the 1st of August, correct?
one in July 1st.
Huh?
8/15, there's the,
August 15th.
August 15th and July 1st.
I believe,
Those are the early ones.
Yeah.
but I believe the July 1st payment is ending soon.
Yeah, that infamous July payment is 2 more, is 2 more years.
I'm gonna pull up the schedule.
Now, that first page.
Oh, yeah, I have page 3 though for this, without the state budget, it's 1.6 almost.
Then the second page is factoring in your fund balance of 3.5 million.
Right.
So,
So actually, the fund balance was sufficient to carry us for that first month.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So what I'm gathering is we're good till February, is that what I'm looking at?
Yeah,
We actually need the,
without the fund balance.
Yeah.
With the fund balance, oh, yeah, we're still,
With the fund balance,
yeah, that's true.
7115 was the last payment of the 2009 series, so we don't have to deal with that.
yeah. 2009, this year was the last of the 2009? I thought we had-
So what are the payments then for? Still the 8/15, and then there's one in like January, and then March, I think is the other one, or April.
There's a 10-1, 2011 is 10-1, the state pub is 10-1, yeah. And then the general obligation 08, the 14 and 15 are 8/15, and then after the state pub and 10-1, it's, yeah, not till February. to
Right.
make payment.
Okay.
How
So-
much do we actually get from the state?
7 or 8 million. Oh, is it how much?
What was it?
17 and a half.
$17.5 million?
Yeah,
yeah.
factoring in homestead, farmstead, yeah.
Oh,
Oh, with the farmstead, homestead.
Yeah.
Oh.
without the farmstead homestead, maybe.
Basic ed is 8 million.
That's what I thought. 8 million.
Right, but with the farmstead, homestead, that's,
Well, if we only get 8 million.
we don't
from them,
reimburse that, do
You're,
we? We
That's
actually,
8 million in basic ed, and then you have your transportation for another 1.5 million.
Right.
yeah, but what I'm looking at, the sheet that says cash flow without the state budget,
It should be about,
puts us in the whole $14 million.
right, because you just said we get 17 total if you include the farmstead, homestead.
Oh, including the farmstead homestead. Okay.
But I guess what I'm asking is, how does the farmstead homestead work? I
You
mean,
get half of it in August, half
We
in
do?
October.
right, so if we don't get that, we're still short, we're still short 17 million, regardless of whether it's basic or it's the farmstead homestead. It's still a cash, we're still short that cash, correct?
'Cause you don't have the 1.2 million factored into local revenue. You have it in state revenue.
here I had it in state.
Yes. That's 1.2 million, so it's representative of your gaming revenue.
Well, that only equals 10.
But even that,
So where's the
we're
difference?
okay until March, if I'm reading this correctly.
Right, for February.
And they'll get something passed by then.
You would hope.
Well, there's always time to file a mandamus action now, and by the time it gets to the courts, then
Well, they get paid, so you may, you may not.
We could just issue IOUs to our employees.
That's what they do.
Mark, you guys okay with that? Fine. Yeah.
Well, simply, Lauren, if they don't pass the state budget, you've got to find $14,256,000 in savings.
Well, no, technically we do because we pass the budget.
I said to Mike this afternoon, if we get to October and there's still a stalemate, and we've heard January, we've heard everything. That's when you do a PO freeze. It's non-essentials.
I thought we had them in place every year,
Well-
starting July.
We've been, but
We
the
did.
point is, in a stalemate year, you've got to play tight and fast, and you should have everything in place by the 1st of September to run the school year anyway, except for emergencies. So, got to pay your utilities, got to make your payroll and your taxes.
all right.
Is that what you had in mind?
Yeah, that's exactly, I
Basil?
mean, that's the number I was looking for there, was to get a sense as to what working capital we needed, assuming everything was the way it was, and then where do we go if the state does not provide us with the funding that they're required to. So I'll ask Mr. Supers about that at the meeting.
I was saying last to Mr. Basil after the meeting, after the executive session last night, RBC Capital, your bond underwriting firm is going to be here in September. They've already reached out to the districts because there are a number of districts across the state that are already in trouble. And they are developing scenarios and they're willing to work with districts on an individual basis to help them find the tax anticipation notes, the best rate, whatever it takes to get through the storm here.
It's one of those reasons for fund balance.
Sure. Any other questions? Anything else anybody wants to add?
I have a different item. I read in the Reading Eagle, I'm assuming it came out of facilities, that Boone plans to spend $40,000 on vehicles.
No.
It's in the
We
Reading
said-
Eagle.
Well, what we said was, what was said is that one of the trucks needs a clutch and something else, and it's not really worth repairing, and they're going to need a vehicle to replace it, and it would probably be about $40,000, and we talked about what we might get in the surplus, and we'll look at it after that, and we didn't, I mean, eventually we're going to need a vehicle.
I guess my question is it not worthwhile to at least look into contracting out snow removal?
Or why wouldn't you lease, well, look, you can look at leasing a truck.
We did talk about
Well, I'm
leasing.
saying,
We did
looking
talk
at
about leasing.
alternatives to flat out just spending.
I think the issue that
$40,000.
we had, and I was at the facilities, weren't you at the meeting too when we were there? I thought we were at the meeting. In the past, when we've looked at contracting out, outsourcing the snow removal, is you're relying on a third party to show up when you need them to get the job done correctly. And if they don't, you're out of luck, right? I mean,
Right.
you're SOL.
That was part of
and-
the issue, was contracting to get people that are going to be here to have the lots, cleared and everything ready to go for when they're here for
In
school.
my experience, every post office in Berks, Chester, and Montgomery County contracts out their snow removal, and they have to have their lots cleared by a certain time, and it's not an issue.
Well, do you have names of the people that do the post office? Because I can tell you, I can tell you my experience in trying to contract out certain clients for municipalities and stuff too. Because they're going to go out, and a lot of these guys with the big trucks, they're working for PennDOT, and when they get paid from PennDOT, they're on call. So they get paid from the time PennDOT puts them on notice, and they might not plow for 8 hours. They might just be sitting there waiting for the snowflakes to swell. So they're going to do that before they're going to come do stuff for us. So, I mean, I can ask, I don't know, I guess Lauren to see if he can find a proposal for it, and we can see what we get. But
We can dig into it.
there's still, I mean, the truck that is not working is also the truck that pulled the trailer that they were doing the landscaping, or not the landscaping
crew.
but they,
travel
like, he
crew,
was
whatever
trying to do it. Originally, we had mowers at every school, and we had people at every school, and he kind of turned that into a landscaping crew so that we weren't duplicating all this stuff. And so that was the truck that pulled the trailer. So, I mean, you still may need a truck, or you can outsource everything, but we can certainly look at that, but I can't put those proposals together. I mean, I guess I shouldn't say that. I
Plus,
can.
we have the sale of all the other equipment that's going on,
2
correct?
o'clock tomorrow.
Right?
The vehicles, and I can
My
send
understanding is
this
like
around.
$32,000 is kind of like what we were expecting.
Correct. I mean, but we didn't, I mean, I didn't come to you with a recommendation yet.
Oh, no, like I said, I read it in the newspaper.
But it was, it certainly was discussed, but just to tell you, I did ask Casey, and I could send this out to you guys too, but, I mean, our truck list, we've got a 1982 Chevy, a 1988 Chevy, a 1992 Chevy, a 2000, I mean, it's not like we have new equipment. We have a couple, the new one we bought last year, and we have it looks like a 2007 van and a 2005 truck, four-wheel drive truck. So you got 3 vehicles in the last
10 years.
decade and a half. Everything else is 2000 and earlier. And at some point, and this is what we're going to be looking at, I think, with the buildings, and it's going to be the same with the vehicles. It's just like your own house and your own vehicles. If you don't maintain this stuff, and I think they've been lacking on some of the maintenance on the buildings and the vehicles because the money's not there. You're going to spend 2-3 times as much when everything falls apart.
Kind of segue into my next question was, since RBC is coming out, I mean, should we at least have a discussion if we float more of a loan to borrow more money to potentially some of these facilities issues that are coming up?
Some of the refinance,
Well, one of the
take some of that
things,
savings and put it towards
one of
Or
the,
do we need to float more of a loan?
one of the things that we were going to talk about, and I don't know if we're going to be ready at the next facilities meeting, but Casey wanted to talk about a performance contract where you do kind of, I guess you have a set amount of money that you're spending yearly on upgrades, and you have
Capital
projects, and you have a contractor that's doing it, and they're guaranteed $1 million or hey, in work or whatever, and you do that, and pretty much we don't have anything to put towards that at this point. So that is a topic of discussion for us that would tie into finance as well as how do we do that. I'd like to see if we get savings from RBC. I kind of thought we talked about it last time, but I don't think we did. But putting that money into a capital fund instead of dumping it right back into the general fund, because eventually you're going to need money.
Well,
and we're going to have to look at this potential closing the school, I think, as well. I mean, it all ties in together, but there's
That is what their presentation is going to be about, is possibility of another bank qualified January 1. The market stays relatively close to where it is. A portion of that refinancing would be part of the 2007 issue. The 2007 issue is callable in the 16-17 year. So it's all part of our 16-17 budget that we're working on. What can we do to be creative here with this whole refi, not only just a $10 million bank qualified, but the overall call on the 2007 issue.
right.
And the other piece.
And that was correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't it like a $50 million issue, or 49 or 45? I can't remember now.
I'll give you the number in a second.
But the other piece, if you haven't heard about it, is this PlanCon aspect as part of the state budget. Not only does PDE want to fund the 100+ districts that have been sitting in the hopper for 3-4 years with approved projects. Now they've got the debt service facing them, but PlanCon has put in a moratorium. So they haven't received their money. So the state wants to float this multi-billion-dollar bond issue to pay up the districts that need to get caught up there, but also all districts such as Boone, who have PlanCon owed them over the next 30 years. So it's a one-time payout. And what they want to present to us is, this is potentially how much you're going to receive, and this is what you can do with it, and how you have to manage it, and that we believe in the management of that as well.
That 2007 issue was when the bond markets were going completely, wasn't it? It wasn't quite, was it?
The issue was $41 million.
Yeah, that's what I thought. 40, 44.
That's the Monocacy.
It was a combination of things.
Monocacy plus renovation.
That was the stadium, that was the renovations here, that was 12 million of it, and then Monocacy was another 20-something, and then they bought a bunch of others,
That's when they bought all the equipment for the
That was a
field.
higher rate, wasn't it?
Other stuff too.
The rate isn't on this chart. I'm not sure what it is. You're probably right. It's 7.
But, I mean, I certainly don't necessarily want to take on more debt, but we're going to have Roy Howard and finance and stuff.
well, if you're refinancing and you're lowering your overall debt service, I mean, that saves money, right? And then if you set some of that money, that savings aside towards capital reserves, that helps address the issue. I'd be curious to see what this list is that Casey's putting together as it relates to these costs and the buildings and the components of the buildings that he's talking about.
Right, and I mean, we'd like to kind of compare to the revenue, yeah. Thank you. I was saying revenue study, but that's not what I want, the reserve study, and see, kind of see if that ties in somewhat. But, I mean, this was just our agenda with the things that were on it, and like I said, the last 3 months we keep getting, so they're trying to prioritize, but I'll have to see if I can scan this in too, but like this is the next 5 years of,
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned
like
roofs.
roofs.
Some of those roofs are under warranty.
well, the one is till the high school roof is under,
Yeah,
till
it's got a shortage,
2017?
And we're looking at possibly extending the warranties for a fee.
Yeah, I mean, we do that all the time.
The other big issue is blacktop, especially at the high school.
Yeah.
So you got metal roof areas at the high school and at AEC.
And I think our warranty is another 7 to 10
And
years.
built up area at the high school, 1.5 million,
We've got rooftop units at the high school, some of them aren't.
and the annex, 1.9 million in
I said
2020.
the HVAC is a big, or there's units at the high school that's an issue, or that's issues too that he's trying to get, and obviously you don't want to do anything with the roof.
Where's he getting these numbers from?
Those are from Tremco.
For the roofing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be trying to. But we've got to fine tune them all, that's just ballpark on a lot of things, but if we can extend the warranties on some of those.
No, I mean, I think that's what you do is you extend the warranty.
And they
Plus,
did say with
I've got some
repairs.
vendors that I could certainly give you that I think could give you much more competitive numbers than that.
We'll look at all options.
I'll tell you, one of the things we did at one of our industrial buildings where we had, rubber roof systems, they actually developed a coating. You go out to your power wash, when all the seams were failing and letting go, you actually take this, you power wash the roofs, you get them completely scrubbed and clean, and then you coat it with this, I forget what it is, some types of epoxy material, and you get a 20-year warranty on that installation, and you saved your roof. I think it cost us $200,000 to do a 150,000 square foot building, as opposed to spending $2 or $3 million on a new roof. So those types of alternatives need to be considered as opposed to just plopping a new roof on there.
No, I agree. And like I said, these are certainly preliminary. It's just, but even if you're looking at half of this or a third of it, you're still talking money we don't.
But the
really
majority of
set
that is
aside.
roofing.
Correct. That's what I'm saying. This is just the roof.
Yeah.
We don't have numbers on the. He's working on putting numbers together on a lot of the things. So, but yeah, I believe there's units on high school units replacements. The annex gym has issues. There's electrical panel and lighting issues at the high school in the annex. Things that aren't up to code that need done. So we told them to really put together a list of the top 10 or 15 or whatever and some costs and do it from there.
Okay.
We've got 200 and some 50-foot extension cords.
Yeah, if anybody, yeah.
You have them available.
Yeah.
Put those things on Craigslist or whatever. And
We're working on another auction after we get this
I
one.
think we should sell Christmas trees. I said we should set up a stand. They have always, I think they have a Christmas bazaar at the middle school or something. We should set up a stand and sell extension cords.
What was, I wanted, just before we go, if there's nothing else, I just wanted to ask, as it relates, since the press is here, as it relates to the cafeteria workers, there was a lot of brouhaha that people were concerned that we weren't hiring local and that the cafeteria workers, when we switched cafeteria providers or food service providers, that the cafeteria workers that used to work for the district would not be offered a job. And they would not have the opportunity to work here anymore. Where do we stand? Because our impression was that they would be offered a job, that in fact, not only would they be offered a job and they continue to work here, they were actually being offered a job at an increase, at a pay increase of 2.5% or something like that. So maybe you could fill us in since that was discussed in June.
June 30th, the entire administrative team, HR department from Nutrition Inc. met here with 28 of the 29. The one couldn't make it because of death in the family. They were all offered, and subsequently they met with that individual. They were all offered a position with an increased rate of pay. And I have heard nothing negative for them. They were, but that day, they even brought in a lunch for them and said, okay, folks, here's the paperwork we need. Then they broke out in small groups, sat down with them, helped them with their paperwork, had a subsequent meeting if they didn't have everything with them, paperwork-wise, that they needed, and met with them again. And
so everybody was offered a job.
That's correct.
Everybody was offered a job at a pay increase, and we'll know, I guess, in the next couple of weeks when school opens, whether those employees chose to take that job or not.
The last conversation I had with management from Nutrition Inc., they all had accepted.
Oh, okay, great.
And
So
they even had them list their shirt size for uniforms, and it, quite frankly, was a very positive time that day.
So the keep lunch local, or local
It's
whatever,
local.
it's still local,
Nothing changed.
and they actually got a pay increase out of it, and the students still have their cafeteria workers, and it was a win-win.
Will we get to meet the manager at some point? Or,
Yeah, he'll probably be at the next board meeting.
Yeah. Okay, good.
He's around here now.
Yeah, that's good.
Came out of Harrisburg City, actually.
All
Where
right,
his
well,
last assignment was.
there was a lot of stuff in the paper and the press about our cafeteria workers and, how their lives would be ruined and our students weren't going to get good food anymore and, so on and so forth. But it seems to me we have a happy ending here.
Michael's had more direct interaction with this gal from nutrition, just in miscellaneous. I think she's going to be here.
Yeah, I talked to them today. Actually, I wasn't going to say anything, but now that I have a chance to talk, they mentioned today there's about 3 that didn't take the job, and that was their own doing. They're just refusing the job from Nutrition Group, and
That's
they
totally
did.
new then.
Yeah,
Since
and
I
then
talked to him last week.
and then they have interest in coming to the board meeting. So I don't know. How
Nutrition Group does?
Yeah, I don't know
All
how
right.
you guys want to facilitate that.
Put them on the agenda.
As far as just introducing himself.
Yeah.
throw him, give him a seat over here or what?
Pardon?
Give him a seat over here or what?
Okay. Anything else? Nothing? All right, we'll call this meeting adjourned.